Hey guys, thanks for watching today. We're going to continue on with this new format, and I'm going to draw on or illustrate on the screen and talk to you about a specific topic. And before that, I will go through some of what I am working on and the art process behind it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who you think might benefit from this information. I'm Kendall Stump, and welcome to the Stump Project. So if you want to skip the art lesson part and go straight to the part where I'm talking about working for free, go to this timestamp here. If you want to see this video in its entirety, visit my Patreon. I'll put a link in the description. So for this piece, I'm referencing some art done by Kelvin Tainerk. I really liked it. It spoke to me. I'm just taking a snippet out of it, just kind of, I guess, cropping it, you could say, just so that it fits into my sketchbook. And it's giving me an opportunity to demonstrate some composition and demonstrate some value and using new material. Obviously, the original piece was done digitally, and it's a beautiful piece, but I wanted to do something more traditional. So I'm using watercolor paper in my sketchbook. So the watercolor paper, it's cold press paper, 300 GSM. Cold press paper is a bit more toothy, a little bit more texture than hot press or Bristol board or any multimedia paper. It works better with wet medium like water, obviously, watercolor, gouache. Today I'm using gouache, and we'll talk a little bit about that here in a second. So the first thing that I did was I taped down the edges. So this is a sketchbook, so I taped down the edges to make it act more like a watercolor block, and this helps to stretch the paper out a little bit and keep it taut. One of the first things that you do, what I did, I taped down the paper and then I wet the entire paper and then I let it dry. This allows the fibers in the paper to contract a little bit and pull itself taut and remain taut while you are working on it and applying more water. Tape down your edges, prep your paper. Then the next thing that I did, I'm going over this with hard graphite. So it's hard graphite. It's a lot lighter than soft graphite. If you want a more finalized line, a bold line, you'll use a softer lead pencil, softer graphite, and that will allow you to draw lighter but get a darker line. I'm using hard graphite, which is you draw lighter and you get a light line. So this allows you to go in and pull up some of those pencil marks that you may not want to see later on. I'm also paying attention to the composition here. Like I said, I took the original piece, but it was more almost square, maybe more portrait, and I wanted it to fit in this landscape style. So I took the point of interest of it, which was obviously Mew, this Pokemon, and what it's looking at. So it's looking at this hieroglyphs on a wall and paying attention to that. So I wanted Mew, the highlights, and the wall to be the focal point, and everything else to kind of frame it up. So I paid attention to the placement of the subject matter, and the subject matter, if you divided your canvas into thirds, I put Mew on the left-hand third because I want him to be more the focus, and then the highlight on the top third. So we have a good framing of the subject with all of the dark foliage, and we will need that dark to show the light, and we can talk about that here in just a second. I'm using gouache today instead of watercolor. Now, gouache is almost exactly like watercolor. The main difference is its transparency. Watercolor, now you can get some more opaque watercolor, but for the most part, watercolor is transparent. Gouache is more opaque. You can make any watercolor opaque by simply adding some white gouache to it. Gouache is already opaque, so you can take whatever color of gouache that you've got and assume that it's going to be very, very opaque. So I'm using that. Another feature of gouache is that it will reactivate much easier with the addition of water than watercolor does. Funny enough, you would think watercolor, it activates easily, and it does. But once it's been applied to paper and it kind of soaks into the fibers of the paper, it almost sets. You can reactivate it. Don't get me wrong. You can reactivate it, and you can destroy it by spilling a glass of water on your piece. But gouache even more so. I'm using gouache today throughout the entire piece, except for one time at the very end. You're going to notice I pull out my pen and ink just to get some additional lines on there that I wanted. I thought would maybe accentuate Mew a little bit more, which I really enjoy doing. I like working with pen and ink. I'd like to do that more, so we'll just see where that takes us. But in the process of how you apply this differently. You apply the paint or the pigment differently than you do when you're working with oil paint. Oil paint, you generally start with the dark colors and then you apply the lighter colors on top of it, because if you start the other way around, you'll never get your dark darks. The light paint underneath will mix with the dark and lighten it up and make more of a muddy color. When you're working with water-based paint, so watercolor and gouache, you start with your lightest first, with the paper generally, I'm going to say generally, being the whitest part. And the reason why I say generally is because, again, gouache is opaque, or more opaque than watercolor is, so you can actually get some really nice thick white gouache and put it right on top of your other color, and it's going to be white. And you don't have to worry about the undercolor bleeding through. It's going to be white on top, very similar to if you would have used acrylic paint, except obviously acrylic doesn't reactivate. So you start with the light colors and you work towards the dark. And you need that dark in order to show the light. So don't be afraid to make things darker, and you want to butt those things up against each other. You want to butt the dark right up next to the lighter color. In other words, if you have the tree, and you'll see it as this piece goes along, if you look in the upper right hand corner, you'll see what's going to be a tree, or leaves on a tree. And as I frame this, the outer edge is going to be really dark, and then as the sunlight or the light source hits the leaves on the tree, it's going to seem bright. Now, if I would have just painted that color of green on, which you'll see later, on just white paper, it would just seem like a medium green, maybe, I don't know, maybe a bright-ish green, but it would still seem dark in comparison to the white paper. But because I'm surrounding it with dark, it's going to seem like, hey, these leaves are being illuminated. So you need the darkness around the parts that you want to be lighter. Darkness shows off the light. Bob Ross has said it, Bill Alexander has said it, I'm saying it, and it's true. You need the darkness to show off the light. So I start in the background because, like I've told you guys before, in your painting, everything starts to take on the color of the environment. So if you have a yellow sky or blue sky, the further back you go, all the blacks and the whites start to take on that yellow hue, that yellow makeup. It'll lose contrast the further back you go, and it'll start to take on the color in the environment. So if you start from the back of your painting and work forward, you start with maybe more pastel, start with lighter colors, start especially along the horizon line. You want to start with those lighter colors. And then as you get to the tops and the bottoms and the edges of your canvas, you start to add more, you start to get darker. You add more contrast, more detail as you get to those edges. Finally, you want to keep your colors unified. And one of the ways that you can do that here, as you can see, I've kind of given my entire canvas a wash in color of some sort or another. And like I said, gouache is going to be reactivated. So when I go to paint on top of some of that stuff, it's going to pick up some of that underlying color, some of those greens and purples and things like that. The color that's going to go on top of it will pick it up. As it mixes, it's going to help unify those colors, so the color palette stays together. Towards the end of this painting, you'll see as I go over it with some more of those purples and greens and things like that to add to the shadows. And again, it's to help unify those things, add those green tints or add those purple tints in the shadow areas, or the yellow tints in the highlights, so that whites aren't just white, they actually have a color to them. So these are things just to keep in mind as you are putting together your composition. whether it be a piece of artwork that you're trying to translate from digital to traditional, or you're trying, whether it be a photograph or just a digital illustration that you want to practice with, like what I'm doing here. Also, you want to make sure that if you do this, make sure you give the originator of the artwork their proper credit. And again, I'll post the name of the artist below. Okay, so I got asked this question. So, okay, wait a minute. Let me just back up. My son is an artist, and he will occasionally do artwork for people in his within his social circle. So he asked me, when was it okay to work for free? Never is my answer. Never. Never is it okay. It is not okay. Not ever, 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 never. Now, I talked in my last video about how to price your work, and I'll link that in the description below, and I'll try to put it in a card in the upper right-hand corner. Why would you never work for free? Well, friends and family are going to expect free work. That's number one. And I say tough. And the reason why I say tough, well, first of all, it's going to sound heartless, right? I mean, it's friends, it's family. You're probably more afraid of their response to you saying no to them than anything else. You can't. And this is why you don't want to work for free ever, including for friends and family. It's because it takes time and energy away from your paying projects. Let me say that again, because it's so important. It takes time and energy away from your paying projects. By the time that you're done working on something for Uncle Joe, the creative process can be very taxing. And revisions are going to go, oh, this is great. Can you do this? Can you add this? And by the time you go through all of these creative changes, you're exhausted. You're just mentally wore out because you've been stuck in this idea for Uncle Joe for who knows how long, and then all the time and effort that you put into it, you're done. You're spent. It doesn't matter if it's friends, it doesn't matter if it's family. They're taking your energy and your time away from your potentially paying projects. You say, well, you have to start somewhere. Why not work for free? And I'll tell you, if you have work that's good enough that people are requesting it, you need to charge them. If someone comes up to you and tells you, hey, I saw your stuff on social media, it looks great, I'm putting together a game, and I can't afford to pay you, and they say that I'm going to pay you in exposure, I can get your name out there. But that's the same thing as working for free. Exposure, getting your name out there, posting your name on a social media post, you can do that. Getting your name in a credit of an indie game that not many people are going to see, you can do that. If they can't afford to pay you, then chances are they're just starting out, just like you are, but they're looking to use you to get a leg up on their project. Forget them. This is about you. But you say, well, what about experience? I can't get a job without experience, and I can't get experience without a job. That's not true. You can give yourself experience. You can play the part of a client. You can make requests to yourself, including deadlines, and start practice going through the steps from negotiation to delivery. Hold yourself to those deadlines and critique your work hard. Make sure it's exactly what you want. And then at the end of it, make sure you pay yourself. Again, we're not working for free. Once you finish a self-project, pay yourself. Maybe you buy yourself an ice cream. Maybe you buy yourself a new sketchbook that you've been wanting or needing. But make sure you get something tangible out of this self-gig. This is your experience. Through this experience, your work will continue to improve. Through this experience, when you do get hired, you'll have a little bit of knowledge to fall back on. What does it take to put together a negotiation? What does it take to put together a design? What does it take to put together your portfolio so that you can get somebody else to hire you? You can get experience without a job. So there's so many people that want to take advantage of you. There's so many people who don't care about you. They don't care about your goals. They don't care that you are just trying to get your artwork out there so that some company will notice you, or maybe they notice you enough so that when you do apply with your portfolio, they recognize it based on what they've seen on social media. That's the exposure that you want. You want to be able to get your brand out there. You want to be able to get your artwork out there so that it's recognizable when you approach the company. Don't sit around and wait for these people to come to you. The only ones that are going to come to you are going to be the ones who want to pay you in exposure. If a paying gig does come your way by chance, that's fantastic. Grab it, use it, put your heart and soul into it, use that artwork in your portfolio, and spread the word, and more people will come knocking on your door. But chances are you're going to have to go out and find that company that you're going to get a job with. Every one of these people who comes to you and wants you to work for free, they're all going to have a story. Some of them are going to have a good story. Some of them maybe not so good story. But they're all going to have a story. They're all going to have a reason why you need to give them your work for free. Don't work for free, ever. So I hope this video made sense. If you have any questions, or if you have some comments, you have some feedback on this, you want to talk a little bit more about it, maybe you have another question, feel free, ask. Leave a question in the comments below, and let's start a discussion, and we'll see where this can take us. I'm not claiming to have all of the answers. This is my experience. I do not have a good experience from myself or my friends and my colleagues working for free when we first started off. It is not a situation that you want to be in. It never gets better, and you're not learning anything from it. So don't do it. So I hope to see you next time. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Like, subscribe, comment, share, you know the drill. If there's something specific you want to hear, let me know, and I will see you next time.